Hello everyone and welcome back. In this section of the course, we will learn about provision VMs and also what you need to know about this topic for the exam. IaaS, PaaS and SaaS are cloud computing service models. IaaS, infrastructure as a service, is the base layer and it deals with networking, storage, servers, and virtualization. VM or Azure Virtual Machine is one of the several types of on-demand and scalable computing resources that Azure offers. An Azure Virtual Machine gives you the flexibility of virtualization without having to buy and maintain the physical hardware that runs it. Though Azure provide you and maintain the physical hardware, but keep in mind it's your responsibility to maintain your virtual machine by performing the tasks such as configuring, patching, and installing the software that runs on it. Typically, we choose a virtual machine when we need more control over the computing environment than the other choices offer. When we create a virtual machine in Azure, there are two separate costs. The subscription will be charged for that VM. First type is compute cost. Compute cost is priced on per hour basis but billed on per minute basis. This per hour basis price varies based on the VM size and operating system, etc. For example, let's suppose you are going to provision two VMs. First one with Windows operating system and second one with Linux. What do you think? Which one will be less expensive? The answer is second one, because there is no operating system license charge included in compute cost for that VM. Also keep in mind, you are not going to be charged for compute capacity if you stop and deallocate the VM, because this releases the hardware. It means Azure can use that hardware for other tenants. The second type is storage cost. This is a separate cost for the storage the VM uses. The status of the VM has no relation to the storage charges that will be incurred. It means if the VM deallocated, you will not be charged for the VM, but you will be charged for the storage unless you have deleted storage as well. So by separating these costs, you scale them independently and only pay for what you need. We can pay this cost by using one of the following two methods. First one is pay as you go. With pay as you go option, you pay for compute capacity by the seconds. No long-term commitment or upfront payments you have to do if you go with pay as you go option. It means you are able to increase or decrease compute capacity on demand and can start or stop at any time. So based on these points, I can say prefer pay as you go option if you run applications with short-term or unpredictable workloads. For example, if you are doing a quick test or developing an app in a VM, pay as you go option is the appropriate option. On the other hand, second option is reserved virtual machine instances. This option is an advanced purchase of a virtual machine for 1 or 3 years in a specified region. So 1 or 3 year means the commitment is made upfront. But by doing that commitment upfront for 1 or 3 years, you will get a benefit of getting up to 72% price savings compared to pay-as-you-go pricing. Now, after reading these 2 points, a question comes in mind, especially when we are going to do commitment for 1 or 3 years. What if for any reason we want to exchange or return a resource? Can we do during this commitment time period? The answer is yes. A resource can be exchanged or returned for an early termination fee. So based on these points, I can say prefer reserved virtual machine instances option if the VM must run continuously, or if you need budget predictability and you can commit to using the VM for at least a year. When we create a virtual machine in Azure, there are few aspects of a VM which are important to think about before you start to create a VM in Azure. The first aspect is thinking about name of the VM. Second is location, means choosing the region where you will place your VM. The size of the VM, the maximum number of VMs, operating system you will install on that VM, and thinking about other resources like IP addresses, VNet, subnets, etc., and the configuration of the VM after it starts. So just keep in mind these points, but we will talk about these points in later slides when we will do the exercises. You can provision a VM in Azure by using the following more than one methods. We can use Azure Portal, PowerShell, Azure CLI, or we can utilize ARM templates, or we can write code to provision a VM in Azure. The first three, Portal, PowerShell and Azure CLI, we will cover in this video. ARM templates is a separate topic and we will cover in a separate video. Provisioning a VM by writing code is not part of this course, but still I will cover this in later examples. So let's start with Azure Portal. Azure Portal is a single unified console to build, manage and monitor everything from simple web apps to complex cloud applications. In my previous video, I have already mentioned that to do the exercises you need an Azure account. If you have created already, good enough, but if not, please go to this URL and start for free. With free Azure account, you will get 12 months of free services, more than 25 always free services, and 150 pound credit to explore Azure for 30 days, which is more than enough to complete this course. So after creating your Azure account, let's sign in to Azure Portal at portal.azure.com, or alternatively from this page you can click on Portal and that will move you from this page to Azure Portal. I am already logged in, but if you are not, it will ask you to enter your credentials to log in on Azure Portal. So let's click on this one. So here is Azure Portal home page. In our case, we want to create a virtual machine, and if you see, that option is already available on home page in Azure Services section. But in case if you want to create a resource or service which is not available on home page, you can find that in Azure menu, or alternatively you can use this top search bar to search resources, services and docs. So let's start creating virtual machine. So first let's search that service by using search bar, and if you see, I have just typed virtual keyword, and based on that keyword I got the filtered options under different categories. And if you see, our virtual machines option is available under services category. So just click on virtual machines. It will take you to the virtual machines page. This is a page where you will see all of your created virtual machines. But because this is our first one, so this table is empty. You can click on this create virtual machine button to create your first virtual machine, or alternatively you can click on this add button. So let's click on this add button. This will take you to the create virtual machine page. On this page, if you see, there are more than one tabs, and under each tab there are input fields which we need to populate to create this virtual machine. So let's start from the first tab's basics. On each tab, all the input fields, if you see, there are some fields which are compulsory and there are some which are optional. For the compulsory fields, you will see a red asterisk in front of fields titles. So let's start from the first input field, which is subscription. If you see, this field is by default populated for me because I have only one subscription. If you have more than one subscriptions, you can open this drop down, and from the available list you can choose the relevant one. After selecting subscription, you have to create or use or select existing resource group. To select an existing resource group under that subscription, click on this drop down and choose from the available list. But in case if you want to create a new resource group, as I am going to create for this virtual machine, click on this create new link and enter a valid resource group name. So you see that if we will enter a valid name, we will see a green tick in that field. This green tick gives the indication that this name can be used for the resource group. But in case of invalid entry, this green tick will disappear and you will see the validation error. And if you see, the OK button is disabled as well. So let's fix this and click OK button. And if you see, when you will click on OK button, it will set that name in this field. But with that name, you can see there is another keyword new. This new keyword indicates this is not the existing resource group. This is new one which is going to be created when this virtual machine will be created. After populating the resource group, we have to choose a virtual machine name. Again, we need to choose a valid name. In case of invalid entries here, again you will get the validation errors. So let's fix this one. After choosing the virtual machine name, we have to choose the location, means the region, and if you see by default it is selected Central US, but based on your requirement you can select any available location from this drop down. Like let's choose UK South for us. After that, next field is availability option. This is optional field, and also this is related to replication, so just let's leave it as it is. The next, you need to choose image or operating system which you want to install on this virtual machine, and again if you see there is a default value selected in this field, but if you want to choose another operating system other than this one, just click on this drop down and you will see the possible options, and you can choose any one of these. If you are looking for something else which is not available in this drop down, you can choose from all public and private images by clicking on this link, and if you see these are all public and private images available. Some of these are free and for others you have to pay, so you can choose from this one. But let's choose for our exercise Windows Server 2019 data center. After choosing the operating system, next field is Azure Spot Instance. Again this is optional, so just leave it default selected value, but keep in mind this is for sharing purpose. We will talk later about this one. Next, you have to choose size. By default, if you see you have choose VM size standard D2SV3, and for that size you will get this CPU power, memory, and you have to pay this price per month. But again, if you are not happy with default selection and if you want to go for less expensive size, or if you want to get more powerful machine, you can change the size. So click on that link, and if you see these are all available sizes, and with each size you will get different CPU power, RAM and data disks, etc. But keep in mind for each size there is different per month price. So based on your requirement, just choose any size from here and click select. So we have choose the size. Now we need to enter username and password for administrator account for this VM. So let's choose the name. Let's choose a password. Confirm the password. So after entering username and password, we need to set inbound ports rules. So how we will connect to this VM. So if you see that public inbound ports by default is selected allow selected ports. It means this will allow all IP addresses to access your virtual machine. But if you want to stop this one, you can select none. Well, let's select allow selected ports option. After this selection, you have to select inbound ports, how you will connect to this VM. So let's choose RDP and Http at the moment. Next thing you have to say about if you have a Windows Server license already. In our situation we don't have, but in case in reality if you have, you will take this one and you can use that existing license, and that will reduce your per month cost. So just leave it no. So this is the way you will populate fields on each tab. So we have completed all fields on basics tabs. All other fields on other tabs we will just use the default values, but just let's have a quick look what we have on those tabs. So click on next button, it will take you to the next tab, disks. And if you see that on that disks tab, OS disk type is already selected premium SSD. But in case if you want to change this one and you want to go for other options like standard HDD or standard SSD, you can change from here. Not only you can change OS disk type, if you want to create a new one and attach that extra disk, you can do. Also, if you want to attach an existing one, you can do that from here as well. But just leave it default selections. Again, click on next to go to next tab, which is networking. On networking tab, we will select virtual networks, subnets, and public IP addresses, etc. And if you see, they are already selected with default values. So just leave it these values at the moment. Also on that tab, you can enable load balancing, etc. Click on next to go to management tab. On management tab, we can enable diagnostics, etc. We can set auto shutdown rules, etc. if that is on, and if you see that, we can set the time. So this virtual machine will be automatically shut down at this time. Also, if you want to get the notification before shutdown, you can enable that feature as well. So on management, we can enable this kind of stuff, but just leave it default values. So click on next, it will take you to the advanced tab. On advanced tab, we can select the extensions if we want to install with that deployment, but again just leave it like that. Click on next, it will take you to the tags tab. Here we can create the tags. Tags are name and value pairs, which we can create to categorize this resource for the billing purpose, etc. But again, just leave it empty at the moment. Click next, and it will do the review and will take you to create page. When you will click on review, it will validate all the input entries, and if validation fails, you will get a validation fail error message. Not only you will get that error message, if you see that against the tabs, you will get a red dot as well, which will indicate something is wrong on this tab. So you can click on that tab and directly go to that tab and fix the validation error. If you see that we have enabled on that tab diagnostics, but we didn't choose storage account for that. So you can fix that either by choosing the storage account or just disable that diagnostics at the moment. So just let's make it off. And if you see, by fixing that error, that validation error is gone. Not that only that validation error is gone, that red dot in front of that tab is gone as well. So after fixing errors, again click on review and create. It will do the final validation again, and if everything is fine, you will get validation passed message. And on that page, you can see all of your entries, and you can just make sure you have entered the correct values. So if you're happy with your entries, click on create button, and this will start initialization and deployment process. As it will take few minutes, so I will pause the video to let this process complete. On successful deployment, you will get a notification deployment is succeeded, and also you will see your deployment is complete message on your screen as well. So let's go to our resource. Resource means our newly created virtual machine. So let's click on this button. On our virtual machine page, if you select overview on the right hand side, it will show you all the basic information about this virtual machine, like the resource group which we use to create that virtual machine, the status of this virtual machine which is at the moment running, location, subscription you use for that virtual machine, the operating system which you installed on that virtual machine, size of virtual machine, IP address, etc. So now, as we have successfully created our virtual machine, now let's connect to this virtual machine. If we are using Windows computer, you can follow these steps to connect to this virtual machine. I am using MacBook, so I will use Microsoft Remote Desktop to connect to this virtual machine. To connect to this virtual machine, click on connect, and it will show you public IP address and port number on that page, and you can use that IP address and port number, or alternatively you can download RDP file. So let's download RDP file. After downloading, just open this file, and as I have already installed this app which you can get from App Store, opening that file will ask you to enter your username and password. This username and password is same what you entered while creating administrator account for this VM. So let's enter that detail. Click OK, and it will show you the certificate warning. Just ignore that bit and click on continue, and it will connect to that virtual machine. As it will take few minutes, so let me pause the video. So now we have successfully connected to this our newly created virtual machine by using Microsoft Remote Desktop. Now let's try to connect to this VM by using HTTP. But to connect to this VM by using HTTP, first we need to install web server on this virtual machine. To install web server on this machine, we can use PowerShell, which is an easy way to do the installation. To open the PowerShell, let's search for the PowerShell. And just run it. And on PowerShell, you can use this command to install web server. So let's use it. Type it and just click enter. It will take few minutes, so let me just pause the video, and if you see, the process has been started. So web server has been installed successfully. So let's close the RDP connection to the VM. Now to connect to this VM by using HTTP, go to overview tab and copy public IP address, and in the browser paste that address and press enter, and it will show you the default IaaS web page like this one. So now, as we have created the VM, we have connected to the VM by using RDP, we have connected to the VM after installing web server by using HTTP. Now we don't need these resources we created in this exercise. So let's clean up all the resources we created in this exercise. So go to the portal. On the portal, if you go to the home page, click on all resources, and you will see all the resources we have created with virtual machine. So the one way to create or to delete all these resources is go into each resource and click on delete, and that will delete that resource, and we can repeat that process for each resource. Or alternatively, because all of these resources are under same group, so what we can do, we can delete just the resource group, and deleting resource group will clean up all the resources under that resource group. So let's go to resource group, and on that resource group page you can see the delete resource group button. Click on that. It will ask you to type the resource group name, so just copy and paste it. That will enable this delete button. Click on that delete button, and if you see, it will start that deleting resource group process, and during that process it will delete all the resources under that resource group. Now as it will take few minutes, so let me pause the video to complete this process. On successful deletion, you will get deleted resource group myResourceGroup notification. And if you go to all resources now and refresh the page, you see everything is gone. So this is a way to create a virtual machine by using Portal. So now let's move to the next exercise, creating virtual machine by using PowerShell. To create a virtual machine in Azure by using PowerShell, either we can install PowerShell on our machine to run PowerShell commands, or we can use Azure Cloud Shell to run PowerShell commands. For this exercise, I will use installed PowerShell, but for the next CLI exercise, I will use Azure Cloud Shell. Just to introduce you guys what is it and how it works. So as I'm going to use PowerShell installed on my machine, so just make sure you have a PowerShell installed on your machines. If not, please go to this URL, click on more, go to resources and click on downloads, and on download page click on command line tools, and if you see on the right hand side you can find all command line tools, same like PowerShell, and you can follow the instructions to install on your machine. As I have already installed that on my machine, so I will skip that step. So let's open first PowerShell on our machines. If you have already PowerShell installed on your machine, just make sure you have the latest version. You can check the PowerShell version by running PSVersionTable.PSVersion command, and it will give you the version installed on your machine. So if you see, at the moment I have 5 major and 1 minor version. After just making sure you have latest PowerShell version installed on your machine, second thing you need to make sure if you have installed old Azure RM module, you need to uninstall that, because we are going to use the latest AZ module. So to uninstall AzureRm, you can use uninstall-AzureRm command and it will remove that module. To install the latest AZ module, you can use install-module command and you can pass scope as a current user or all the users. So let's install AZ module on our machines. So yeah, it's asking that are you sure you want to install the module from PG gallery, so you say yes and it will start the installation process. So it will, yeah, so you see it has been completed. So now we have PowerShell and the latest AZ modules installed as well. Yeah, so just to make sure, or if you have already installed and if you want to check what version you have installed on your machine, you can use Get-InstalledModule command to check the version. So let's check what version we have installed. So if you see that we have this version of AZ installed. So now everything is ready to run AZ commands to create virtual machine by using PowerShell. So the first thing what we need to do is log in on our Azure account. To log in on our Azure account, we can use Login-AzAccount command. And if you will run this command, it will ask you to enter your Azure credentials. So just pass your Azure username and password. On successfully logged in, it will give you your account detail. After successfully logging on into your Azure account, let's get all the subscriptions. I have just one and I can see that in that above line, but in case if you guys have more than one and you people want to check, because we will use one subscription to create this virtual machine. So in case if you want to check, you can check by running Get-AzSubscription command. When we will run this command, it will get all the subscriptions we have. And if you see, I have just one. So you will see name under the name and ID under the ID and tenant ID under the tenant ID. And also you will get state as well if that subscription is enabled or disabled, etc. So after getting the subscription information, let's set the AZ-context to the subscription which we want to use to create this virtual machine, and we can set that context by running Set-AzContext command, and we can pass the subscription name which we want to use. So we can use this command. So as I have one, I can copy from that, return the result, the name of that subscription, and I can just change this your subscription name string. Yeah, just press enter. So this will set your subscription as a context. So whatever now you will create under that subscription. So the first thing to create a virtual machine is resource group. to create a resource group, you can use New-AzResourceGroup command, and to that command you have to pass your resource group name, and at the moment I'm using myResourceGroupName, and also you need to pass the location. So just type that command and press enter, and if you see, this will create a resource group, and on successful creation it will return you the resource group name, the location, and provision state, etc. like it's succeeded. Also it will give you resource ID as well. So after creating a resource group, now let's create our virtual machine. To create a virtual machine, we can use New-AzVm command, and that command will take resource group name, VM name, location, and the ports, etc. which you want to open. Keep in mind, these are the mandatory fields, these are the optional fields, but let's populate all. So let's type that command. So if I will press this one, what it will do, this command, this will create virtual machine in Azure. But we know that with that virtual machine, it will create other resources as well, like public IP address and subnet, or virtual net, etc. And it will open the ports as well. 3389 to connect to this VM by using RDP, and 80 to connect to this VM by HTTP. So let's press enter. It will ask you for username and password. This username and password is for administrator account for this VM. So just choose any a username and password for that VM. So let me choose. So you see, process has been started. It will take a little bit time, so I will pause the video and will let this process complete. So now our VM and all the other required resources has been created successfully. So on successfully creation, it will return you the message with detail like resource group name, ID of that, location, and all other relevant information. And now if you go to your portal and go to your all resources, you will see all the resources with your VM created in Azure. So now we have created our virtual machine. So now let's try to connect to that virtual machine. As we have opened port 80 and 3389, which is for RDP. So let's start first to connect to this VM via RDP. So first you can open remote desktop, how we open from the menu, or alternatively you can use this command which I'm going to show you. But for that command we need public IP address, and if you see, we didn't get that public IP address in this return message. So what you can use, this Get-AZ public IP address command, and you can pass the resource group name to that command and select IP address, and it will return the public IP address, which we can use in next command to open RDP from PowerShell. So let's first pass this command, and as I said, what this command will do, this will get IP address, public IP address. Yeah, so IP address is this one. So now to open the RDP, we can use this ms tsc command, and if you see, we need to pass public IP address to this command. So let's type that command. And in that command, let's pass this IP address, which I can copy from here, and press enter. And if you see, it will open this pop-up, and you can pass the password here. But if you see, by default it picks your machine username, but here we want to pass the username and password for our VM. So click on more choices and change the user, and if you remember, username for our VM, we populated my VM username, and the password we choose. So click OK, and if you see, again it will give you certificate warning, but ignore that and click yes, and it will connect to that VM. As we are opening first time, so sometime it takes few minutes, so let me pause the video. So if you see, now we are successfully connected to our newly created VM. So now let's try to connect to this VM by using HTTP. So if you remember what we did in previous exercise, first we need to install web server on this VM to connect to this VM by using HTTP. And to connect to install web server on this machine, we can use install Windows feature command in PowerShell. So let's run this command, but this one is my machine. We need to install that web server on our virtual machine. So let's open PowerShell on that virtual machine. Yeah. So it is open, and let's run that command. Again, it will take few minutes, so let me pause the video. So web server has been installed successfully on this newly created virtual machine. So let's close this virtual machine now. So this is our own machine, and this is the IP address. So now if we use this IP address in browser, you see it will successfully show IaaS default page. Now again, as we have finished this exercise, and we don't need anymore all the resources we created in Azure. So let's clean up all the resources we created. To clean up all the resources we created by using PowerShell, we can use remove AZ-204 command. As I have mentioned earlier, this is the easiest way to clean up all the resources. So let me remove this command we don't need. So we can use remove AZ-resourceGroup command and pass resource group name. Press enter, it will ask you, yes, you want to remove blah blah, yes, delete it. And when we will remove resource group, as I have mentioned already, it will remove all the resources created under this resource group. It will take few minutes, so let me pause the video. So now resource group and all the resources under that resource group are gone, and they have successfully removed. So if you go to into the portal and the resource or resources, you will see everything is disappeared. So this is a way we can create virtual machine and related resources by using PowerShell. Now let's move to the next exercise and creating virtual machine by using Azure CLI. To create a virtual machine by using AZ CLI, either you can install AZ CLI on your machine and run the commands, or you can use Azure Cloud Shell. Azure Cloud Shell is an interactive, authenticated, browser accessible shell for managing Azure resources. It provides the flexibility of choosing the shell experience that best suits the way you work, either Bash or PowerShell. To launch Azure Cloud Shell, either you can open Azure Cloud Shell in a separate browser tab by using this URL, or you can open Azure Cloud Shell in Azure Portal. Here is Azure Cloud Shell button in Azure Portal. But let's use in a separate tab so that we will get more space to write code and view the results. So let's open by using that URL. shell.azure.com/bash. So on first time it will ask you to enter the credentials. So let's enter username and password. Secondly, it will ask you to choose a directory if you have more than one directories under your account. So let's choose the directory. Third thing, it will ask you to create a storage account because Azure Cloud Shell requires an Azure file share to persist files. So if you are using Azure Cloud Shell first time, it will ask you to create storage, which it will use for file share stuff. So click on create storage button. It will take few minutes, so let me pause the video and to let this process completed. So after successfully logged in, the first thing we need to know is about our subscriptions. To get the subscriptions list, we can use AZ-account list command. So let's type that and press enter, and it will give you your all subscriptions list. The next thing is we need to set the context, and if you remember, we want to set the context to the subscription which we want to create, which we want to use to create virtual machines. And we can use this command AZ-account set to set the context, and we can pass that subscription which we want to use. So from the previous line I can copy that subscription name, and I can pass that name to this command. And press enter. So this will set the context to this subscription. So now whatever we will create, it will be created under that subscription. So let's create first thing Azure Resource Group, which we will use for that VM. To create a resource group, we can use AZ group create command, and we can pass the Azure resource name and the location. So if you see that I'm using AZ group create command, I'm passing the name myResourceGroup, and location I have chosen West US. So just press enter and it will create resource group for us under that subscription. So it has been created successfully. The next thing we have to create is virtual machine. To create virtual machine by Azure CLI, we will use AZ Virtual Machine VM create command, and we will pass resource group name, virtual machine name, and the location, VNet name, and some other information. Just keep in mind resource group name, location, and image are the mandatory which we need to pass, and some of these are optional, but let's pass all. So to create AZ Virtual Machine, let's use that command. And if you have noticed, on this command we have passed administrator username and password as well, so it will not ask you at this command to enter username and password for administrator. So press enter and it will start creating your virtual machine, and not only just virtual machine, the all other required resources like VNet, subnet, IP address, etc. The process has started. It will take few minutes, so let me pause the video. So now our VM and all the required other resources they have been created. And now if you go to your Azure Portal and if you refresh all resources page, you will see your VM and all the created resources by CLI. Now after creating this virtual machine, now we want to connect to this virtual machine, and for that, if you remember, we need to open ports. So to open ports in Azure Cloud Shell by using CLI commands, you can use AZ-VM open port command, and you can pass port number which you want to open, and resource group name and virtual machine name. So let's use this command. So AZ-VM open port and port number and resource group name and virtual machine name. And if you see, it's running and it will open the port, and it has been done now. The rest of the steps are same what we did in previous two exercises, so I will just leave up to you. Like after opening a port, you can open another port for RDP, and then after that you can connect to this VM by using RDP, or you can install web server on this VM by using this command, and then you can use IP address to connect to this virtual machine by HTTP. The last thing which we did in previous two exercises is cleaning all the resources. So to clean all the resources by using AZ CLI, what we need to do, we need to delete AZ group, and when we will delete AZ when we will delete that group, it will delete all the resources under that group as well. So to delete the group, we can use AZ group delete command, and we can pass group name to that command, and let's do it and press enter. It will ask you, are you sure you want to perform this operation? Press, and it will start deleting resource group and all the resources under that group. It will take a few minutes, so let me pause the video. So now that group and that resource group and all the resources under that group, everything has been deleted. So this is a way we can create a virtual machine by using AZ CLI. This is the last exercise in this video. Now let's talk about exam tips and references. So finally, in the end, let's just talk for a few minutes about what you really need to know about this topic for the exam. For the portal, familiarize yourself with Create Virtual Machine page and the tabs on that page and input fields under each tab. For the PowerShell and CLI, remember the commands I used and their order. Here are my recommended references for further study. On the first link, you can get more tutorials related to virtual machines. On the second one, you can get information about PowerShell and more commands. On the third link, you can get more information about CLI and CLI commands. If you have any question, please put in comment section and I will try my best to give answer as soon as possible. Please subscribe the channel to get more videos related to this course and for other topics. In the next video, I will cover the next topic, configuring VMs. So till then, have good time and bye bye.